Hi all, welcome to the channel. Meeting you all after some gap. So in today's video, we have VJ. So VJ is currently living in USA and he's an engineering manager at Google and have almost 2 decades of experience. So although I always meet him with this like 2 decades of experience, but he's such a quiet and chill person to talk and converse with. So आप लोगों को भी इस वीडियो के एंड तक वो चीज समझ में आ जाएगी जो मैं कह रहा हूँ. But yeah, without wasting much time, welcome VJ and thanks for doing this. And
Thank you, guys. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. And please go ahead and why don't you introduce yourself?
Cool. आपने already थोड़ी introduction दे दी है. So I'm VJ. My first name is Vineet. I'm an engineering manager at Google right now. I joined Google last year, so I've been with them for just a little over a year. Before that, I worked at Amazon as a software development manager, which is very similar to engineering manager, for about 6.5 years. And before that, I worked at Bloomberg for about 10 years. So my experience in US is about 18 years, but after my undergrad, I also had worked for about a year and a half in India before coming here for masters. So I came to US for studies. I did my master's in computer science from Binghamton University, which is in upstate New York, and I also have a part-time MBA.
That's great. Even I wasn't aware about this MBA part. So you have covered like engineering undergrad, masters, part-time MBA. We can touch all these things some other time. But
Sure.
for now, Vijay, as currently in many of the colleges, placement seasons is going to start in India specifically, right? And as an engineering manager for such a long time, you must have been through hiring process, involved in hiring process, right? So like, what are the important points you look in a candidate while hiring? Like, what are the green ticks, like, or what are the red flags, like, oh, no, this won't work in a resume or while talking to the candidate? So what are those points like, which are your like go-to while observing or while making the decision?
Okay, so usually the things that we look for are different for freshers versus experienced candidates, right? Mainly because, again, from experienced candidates, you would expect some experience, like what kind of projects they have worked on, but that's not the expectation from the entry-level people who have just graduated. Since you mentioned that now the placement season is on, do you want me to touch on both, or do you want me to focus on one type, which is, let's say, fresh out of college graduates?
Both would be good. Like.
Okay, sounds good. So first you mentioned resume, right? So I think the very important part of a resume is to be concise and to highlight things that differentiates you from somebody else. Now, like for example, if you're a student and if you have taken all similar courses, then everybody's resume, and if you mention only those courses, then everybody's resume is going to look similar, right? So in that case, what will be your differentiating factor? Like not many, right? You probably have only one, which is your GPA. So if you have a good GPA, I would definitely encourage you to state that, so that at least that will be eye-catching, and then the recruiters will say, okay, like let's give candidates with high GPA a chance first. In addition to that, but that is in my opinion not sufficient, because competition is very high, as you as you already know. Like people need to do a lot more, and by lot more I mean like some other things such as some side projects, some open source contributions, and mention the impact of that on your resume. Now, fresh graduates often ask, like, but how do I measure impact? Like, I'm not working anywhere, so I don't have any like revenue increase kind of numbers. But even just the intention of trying to find and highlight impact is pretty important. Like what I mean by that is in your course project, let's say you did something, right? Let's say you ran some algorithm, and in your class, you were in, let's say, top 10 percentile in terms of execution speed of that algorithm. That is an impact, right? You should mention that, saying that, hey, I like this was a course project, but I was in top 10% in terms of execution time, and then mention that execution time, like however milliseconds, etc. That will show the attention to detail, and then try to kind of measure how your project had an impact or was different from something else. The impact is expected from their project itself. Like, did they contribute to revenue growth? Did they contribute to latency reduction, or how they like developer experience or developer speed? Like, however they mentioned that. So what was the impact, and how did you kind of achieve that impact? Like by doing what? So there is a XYZ framework. I think that's pretty much like I did X, achieve Y by doing Z kind of thing. So this is very important to kind of phrase your data points in your resume in this particular way. So that's about resume. Like there are other things also you could do to differentiate yourself, such as by attending conferences or speaking at conferences. Just actually attending conferences is really not that helpful, because anybody can do that, right? But if you've got an opportunity to speak at a conference, that shows your expertise in some specific areas. So find ways. There is no one thing that everybody has to do. Everybody does not have to focus on only course projects or only side projects, but they can find their expertise, such as, let's say, competitive programming. Like if they are doing really well in that, then that could also be a differentiating factor. So find what motivates you, find what interests you, and then that will differentiate you from others. And then state that on your resume. That would be my kind of at least most important high-level guidance. I've also written a blog post on things to look, things people look for, or what to have in resume. So please check that out as well. You can add links to my blog post and also in that. So that's about resume. Now, during actual interviews, what do we look for in candidates, right? So there are two aspects. One is technical skills and second is behavioral skills. Now, behavioral skills matter more as you gain more experience because people expect with different data points, such as how you communicated your ideas, how you work with cross-functional stakeholders, how you manage projects, how you got buy-in, how you have influence, etc. But that is not what people expect from fresh graduates, right? Because you don't have that opportunity. Like it's unfair to expect that. However, there are certain things that one can still judge or guess. I'll map it to Amazon leadership principles because it is a little easier to explain it that way. But like it's not applicable only for Amazon. Like all companies look similar, one version of the other of this. So hard skills, let's not kind of talk about that. That's pretty common, but I'll brush upon that very quickly anyways. Depending on the company, that changes. Like for example, the big tech, they focus mainly on data structures and algorithms, but not everybody does, right? So you have to do homework about like what the company that you're interviewing for, like what do they look for? Some people look for language specific skills, like very expert in C++, Python, Java, whatever. But that's not the expectation in FANG, right? Like any programming language is fine. And to solve data structure algorithm problems, you don't really have to be an expert in that language, right? Like you don't have to know nitty-gritties, details, multiple inheritance or templatization, etc. in object-oriented programming. So understand what is exactly expected from you in that particular interview and focus on that preparation. So that is technical skills. For soft skills, for students specifically, I think ownership and kind of responding to feedback are important things because companies hire smart people, right? And what is the expectation from smart people? They take their job seriously and they learn, right? So you need to have that curiosity, or from your answers, you need to demonstrate that you have that curiosity and you're open to feedback, because learning happens in multiple ways, right? Like you read the documentation and you understand, or you attend some meetings and you understand, but feedback is also important. And that is kind of tied with the communication aspect as well, right? Like when you do something, if that needs to be done in a little different way, people are going to give you that feedback, right? And then how you respond to that feedback is important. So they try to assess that, because these things the students can show in their from their soft skill perspective in interview. Like for example, in ownership, like how seriously they took a project, or if there was a group project, like what was their responsibility? Like did they only do tasks that were supposed to do, or did they kind of go out of their way and then try to make sure that everything is covered little more than whatever that was expected from that group project, or how they kind of made sure that everybody is assigned their responsibilities and they delivered on those. So these things kind of touch upon the ownership aspect of like how seriously they have taken their previous responsibilities, and here responsibilities meaning course project, coursework, side projects, whatever that would be. And then in curiosity, or like whether they are like willing to learn and demonstrate like how they have learned before, that's where your other activities come into picture, right? Like if you excuse me, if you are only doing coursework, then that doesn't really highlight the curiosity that much, right? So that the point that we discussed earlier about having something else in the resume, that also applies here, that shows your curiosity, like based on whatever field you are interested in. Like if you're web development, then building something on the side, or learning some web development frameworks, which are usually not covered in your course curriculum, right? Or if you're interested in AI ML, like doing something in that. Just taking course, I mean, I think it's fine, but it's not that, again, helpful, because anybody can just take a course, right? Taking the course and applying that idea is what differentiates other people, because anybody can just read a book, but then what you got out of that book and how you applied that in real by doing projects, that is what kind of sets you apart. So these are some of the things that I would say are most important. Like there are other things also, like how you communicate with the interviewer, how you kind of express your thoughts or express your thought process of how you're solving the problem. It is not expected that everybody, as soon as the problem is given, you just start writing code and deliver the solution, right? That's actually a red flag. So how you communicate with the interviewer, how you clarify your doubts is all kind of taken into consideration. So there are two parts to this, the interview part. Like one is like preparation to get to the interview, and then how you demonstrate your expertise during the interview. So I would say focus on both.
Yes, I get the gist. Just to summarize, right, like what I understand from all this, right, which is common for a fresh candidate right out of college interviewing for companies in the final year, and someone with a little experience, right? So one is the like contribution, right? Contribution means impact, right? What impact their work has had in whatever they feel. Like if there are like experienced candidates, they have worked this project. You mentioned a XYZ framework, right? Mention the impact. As college students, if they have internship, they can mark their impact in their internships. If and so they don't have one, whatever personal projects they have done, right? At the same level, because you mentioned about doing out of curiosity something outside your curriculum, which I think most of the students are doing right now nowadays, right? Like they're learning web dev, right? They're making projects. So whatever projects they are making, what impact does that project have, right? Like I read in a Twitter blog that, okay, students can make something interesting of a web dev, like a simple website to find 5 best dosa places near my location, right? So this is a small impact, right? You don't need to have impact at such a majority level, right? You're not an organization. You're not impacting 100 millions of people. Even at our college level, you're impacting 10, 20, 30, 40, your campus, or even if you're like your batchmates at some point of level, maybe routine, timetable management or something, right? That's the impact which will be crucial. Right?
Yep, you got it right.
Yes. And obviously you mentioned about a point called communication, right? The communication you mentioned, like during the interviews, that I get, like better communication is a key in each and every field. I would like to understand from your perspective, how much role communication plays after you land a role in a job, and like while you're in the job, how much importance is of communication, like while the tasks you are doing, the sprints you have planned, right? How effective is the communication and what is its importance?
Extremely important. I mean, after some point, I think communications become more important than your actual technical skills as well. So that's not to say that you should not have technical skills or lacking technical skills. You can compensate that from having good communication. That's not what I'm saying. But as you grow in your career, communication becomes more and more important. But it's equally or like really important for fresh graduates who join the company as well. And communication is a very overloaded term, right? Like there are so many things that are covered in just within that communication thing. Like how do you communicate with your manager? How do you communicate with your team mates? That is different from the manager. How do you communicate with your cross-functional stakeholders? That could be different. How do you also, it's a verbal communication and it's written communication, right? How do you write documents, or how do you like present your ideas in team meeting? How do you ask questions? So there are many different aspects of. So we'll probably take an hour if we talk about every single one, but I'll just give you a few examples of what I mean by like these different things and why they're important. So first of all, when you join a company, like even if it is remote job, like you are still working in a team, right? So you are not only dealing with the computer, you are actually working with other humans as well. And then you are that's why you need to express your ideas of like clarifying requirements and making sure that you're on the right track, which is basically communication, right? Like you're making sure that you understand the problem correctly and your approach of solving that is also in line with what other people expect. Because you as a fresher, you're not expected to know everything. Like, so it's expected you ask questions, right? And then even if you have opinions, like that does not mean that they're always going to right. And so you kind of express your thought process, like why you thought about that particular solution, and then kind of bouncing those ideas off of other senior members of the team. That kind of shows that, okay, you have a perspective, but you're also open to listen to ideas and get clarification or get confirmation that your idea was the right one, and then kind of work off of that. Or communication with cross-functional stakeholders. Like it's not that they're going to give you like a ticket where everything else is detailedly explained and then you just go and implement, right? Like you will have to, they may not know of certain constraints or certain limitations. You will have to kind of bring them up and say, hey, but what about this? And what about that? If we do this, this might be the problem. Or if we do this, this is the trade-off that we'll have to think about. This is all part of communication. In addition to that, like working with your manager, right? Your manager's responsibility is not just getting the projects done. Like it's their responsibility to make sure that people grow in their team, right? So in that case, but ultimately you are responsible for your own career growth, right? It's not, you cannot just leave that in the manager's hand. So then how do you work with your manager on that? Like how do you ask for opportunities? How do you highlight your accomplishments? How do you kind of make sure that you are on the right track? How do you seek feedback? How do you give feedback? Well, sometimes to manager, but sometimes to also other people. Like these are all aspects which are really important to make sure that you are on the right track, and also you get the credit that you deserve, right? Because if you're just isolated and if you just solve the problem, then it's not going to be that effective, because you may not be solving the right problem, and even if you do, then people are not going to know or not going to notice that like what all things that went in solving that problem, right? So that's why I think people have to really focus on the communication aspect, and it comes with practice, right? Like it's not that you have to be extrovert to always like talk to your teammates or cross-functional stakeholders. It comes with practice. Like, and I'm also not saying that you have to change your personality, but you have to be bold, and you have to not be afraid of taking risk and asking questions as you join. Like again, like nobody expects you to know everything. Like they expect you to know your course material, the language and the technical skills, but nothing about the company. So do not be afraid to ask questions, and that's basically it's communication, right? Like unless you communicate effectively, like how are you going to ask questions in the right way, or understand what they're saying in the right way, and then respond to that feedback.
I got the gist. So just like I would like to add a few pointers here on what you mentioned, right? Like as you mentioned multiple times, asking questions. So yes, one thing which folks get confused that which don't know that, yes, see, asking questions is also a communication, right? If you ask, the more you learn, right? Nobody feeds a closed mouth. That's the entire gist, right? And like communication is also a part of, like, when you go for design interviews, right? System design routes or low level design routes, there is no pinpoint correct answer like a TS algorithm. Okay, this is accepted, this is not accepted. There are always trade-offs, right? So then this also is important factor. How you communicate will also lead to a result of like how well you handle design interviews, right? And just a plug-in, like I would like to give a huge shout out to Vijay, because he has a great YouTube video and even a YouTube video and a Twitter thread on a one-on-one conversation with managers. So I would highly encourage you all to check it out if you are working professionals. I will add that in the description also below. Yeah. But going ahead, Vijay, one point I would like to discuss, right? Okay, I'm learning on my job, right? I'm communicating, I am doing the projects, I'm having conversations with my manager, right? I think that I'm doing what I can do, right? But there's still, at whatever level of your career, I think it might happen, there's a phenomenon of imposter syndrome, right? Like our inferiority complex, where I feel that, okay, I'm not doing as much as I might be able to do, right? I can do more, or even I'm doing whatever I can do, I'm not able to match my peers, right? They're always doing better than me. It's not like someone is pinpointing to me anything, like everything feedback and everything is good. But what if when that happens with you, right, at different aspects of career, how to deal with it? Because even you are following all the points to become a better engineer, grow in your organization, this comes to my mind, an individual mind, right? How will they start? Say I am working, I'll start thinking, and that will also impact my performance, right? If I get stuck on that loop, I won't be able to focus, because at the end, I will always think that no matter whatever I do, I won't be able to contribute to my team as much as others are doing, right? So I would like to know your points on this and how to handle this. What are your takes on this?
Yeah, imposter syndrome is very natural, and it happens at every stage of your career, right? It is not that like, oh, only freshers or like people fresh out of college and have this. Like whenever I join any new company, I feel like an idiot, like especially when I see other like stakeholders or other partners, team members, etc. Right? I think what helps, there is no one, unfortunately, like right answer or a formula that do this and your imposter syndrome will go away, right? Because it's an emotional thing, right? Like everybody feels is different, and what helps them feel differently will also be different. But there are some things that usually help a lot of people. So I'll mention a couple of them that definitely has helped me. One is understanding that you are not expected to know everything, right? At least when you join the company, or even like later in your as you grow in that company, you're not expected to know everything. When you join, you're only expected to know what you claim to know, right? Meaning that technical expertise and your previous experience, etc., but nothing in the company. So don't be too harsh on yourself and feel that, oh, you need to start contributing from day one or even week one, otherwise you're a loser, right? That's not the case. So make sure that you and accept that okay, not knowing is fine as long as you work on that, meaning asking the right questions, reading the right documentation, or whatever that the company requires you to know to acquire that knowledge, right? So first, this acceptance phase is, I think, pretty important. Like don't have unreasonable expectations from yourself. The second one is basically wins stacking, meaning that look at your past performance, like from wherever you want to. Like if you're a fresh graduate, you can look at college and even your schooling and see how you have grown, and or try to analyze like where all you experience this imposter syndrome, and then what was the result, right? You are at this stage, meaning that you must have done something right in the past, right? Like maybe your one of the exams did not go as you expected, but later on you did well in other exams, right? So thinking about that and stacking your wins, that okay, like, oh, I did this well, oh, I did that well as well, and this was the difficulty I faced, but I overcame that difficulty in this particular way. Like that kind of gives you that confidence that yes, this is not the first time I'm experiencing this. I have experiencing, if not in the exact same feeling, something similar in the past, but I overcame that, right? And if I could overcome that, I could overcome this as well, of course, with the right efforts. But that's what probably you did in your past as well, that okay, the exam didn't go well, but then you learned from that, you understood what was the either deficiency in your preparation or in your approach, and you incorporate that in the next time, and then you did well, and then you continued to grow, right? So this kind of like looking back and making sure that you recognize your victories or achievements, no matter how small they are, will give you this mental confidence and boost that okay, like I can do this. If I could handle that, I could handle this as well. So these two main things are from the thought process perspective. And then the third one, which is equally important, is actually the action, right? If you only think, but if you don't really get like take that your own feedback into consideration and act on it, then you're going to continuously feel that. Like, so making sure that you're taking the right steps, getting the feedback from whoever you can to kind of understand what needs to be done to be more effective, and then implementing that or actually doing that in action will help you kind of solidify that I thought I could do this, but then yes, I did this, and now I am better than what I was yesterday. So this is like a feedback loop. Like you understand what needs to be done, but then when you do it, that kind of like confirms your original assumption that yes, I can do that, and then this kind of cycle continues. So that would be three things that I think that are usually helpful for other people. But again, your mileage may vary, right? Like some people are they need more cycles like this. Some people might be okay in just like a few cycles or few different thoughts.
Exactly. So basically, you get the like acceptance. Don't fight it. Accept it. You are feeling that. Why you are feeling that. Work on those skills. Celebrate from your previous victories in different areas, right? Like we might feel exams, we have like college days, school days, entrance exams, whatever, right? When you are in a company, you cracked an interview which seemed so. Imagine like how far you have come in the last 1 year or 5 years, right? Whatever seems like impossible at that point of time is now your reality for some of the folks watching this video, right? If you have cracked your dream job, working towards it, it's that, right? And yeah, take actions. So we had a very good conversation with Vijay. I'd just like to close it off, like to ask you with one advice you would give it to someone who is in final semester or just having 6 months of experience, starting their career. What would be your one advice to them?
Don't be afraid to fail. And one thing is like, not everything will always go as per your plans, right? But that does not mean that you should not try or you should get discouraged. Especially in this particular phase is important because as you're graduating, if you don't get the job, right, like it's going to be difficult, and it is difficult. I'm not sugarcoating that, saying that nahi sab chalta hai, ho jayega, sab theek okay. Ultimately, if you put in the right effort, it'll get better. But for how long you'll have to make that effort, like that is unknown, right? Like because that depends on so many factors, the economy, your own preparation. But the point is, everybody experiences failure at some point. If you look at my only just that Twitter bio, I have experienced so many ups and downs, so many failures. So everybody goes through that. Like, just be confident, have faith in yourself, and there is no substitute for hard work, right? Like, yes, luck plays a role, but luck usually favors people who work hard as well. So keep working hard, understand, learn from your mistakes, try to analyze your mistake. You may or may not always get the feedback on what went wrong, but you're a smart person. You have to kind of also do your part of analyzing what may have gone wrong, what I could have done differently, and act on that, right? And be consistent, don't give up. And yeah, hard work eventually pays off. I would say it's part of the cycle, part of the process, part of life. Just give your best. Do not compare yourself with others, because that is also a trap that otherwise you'll never feel satisfied. Compare yourself with your own previous self, right? Like how far you have come. Be willing to take feedback, or rather seek feedback from other people who are like at least one step ahead of you, like what worked for them, and then try to continuously grow.
Gotcha. Very, very, very well, aptly explained. Like, yeah, totally. Just like seek feedback, seek discomfort, because that's where you are learning. That's where we all learn, right? Where we are comfortable, we don't learn, right? And when we are discomfortable, and scared. I just saw a video today that like when you are scared, that means you are trying something new, right? It's a good thing. Being scared, seeking discomfort is a good thing, but don't stop. The moment you stop, you have to start afresh after some point.
Yeah, I'll just add a little bit to that. Don't stop, but you should definitely take a pause. Exactly. And once you overcame that discomfort or difficulty, celebrate that, right? Because that gives you that confidence and confirmation that, yes, I overcame that challenge, and now I should take a moment to celebrate. If you're constantly running behind some goal, or, oh, okay, that's done, I need to focus on something else, that's not really that useful for mental health, right? Like, you also need to celebrate. So, take a pause. Don't stop, you're right, but take a pause to kind of acknowledge that, or recognize your own efforts.
Exactly. Yeah, very, very well important point added by you, Vijay. Really, totally agree upon that. Yeah, I think I'm done now with all the questions I had for you. For now, you'll definitely do this again, very sure. And you have been living in US for such a long time. Good to share your experience on that. How you decided to shift from India to there. Like your then how has been your experience working 10 years in Bloomberg specifically, Amazon in 6.5 years? Would definitely love to know about that. Your different roles experience from engineer to engineering manager. So we'll cover up all this in some other conversation of us. But yeah, thanks a lot. I know it's too early for you, same doing this. And thanks a lot, Vijay. And just like keep sharing your knowledge through your YouTube channel. I urge all of you watching this to please go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Check out his Twitter threads. He is just like great knowledge, right? Just try to observe all of that. Great, it will be helpful in all of us, our careers. Thanks, Vijay, for doing that. And just, yeah, do you have any final words to say to the audience?
Thank you very much, Faiz, again, for giving me the opportunity to talk to you and talk to your audience. This is what I love. This is what drives me. Also, one of the best things I like about management is like helping people grow, right? Like, and that's what I'm trying here as well. Yeah, I'm on Twitter, I'm on YouTube. YouTube frequency has reduced, but I'm trying to be a little more consistent over there. But yeah, I think a lot of videos are in the pipeline. And yeah, hope you get some good value out of that.
Definitely. Yeah, won't take much of your time, Vijay. Thanks a lot for doing this. See you all. See you, Vijay, next time. Keep learning, keep coding, and take care of all of yourself. Tada, bye bye. See you soon.
Thank you. Bye.